if you're explicit in conversation regularly with everyone about what are we heading towards, and then give everyone sort of the opportunity to understand how their day-to-day activity ties to that, that's how we get the best results. I was afraid to get into sales when I was younger. I thought I was going to be an attorney, and various, turns of events wound me up, talking to a recruiter about a sales job. And initially I was afraid to take it because I thought I was going to be the person who was going to call in the middle of dinner, try and, sell you a credit card that you don't need, or things like that. And I think a lot of times, we see in movies and experiences with bad salespeople that, people expect a salesperson to be aggressive. They expect a salesperson to be dishonest. They expect them to be, money motivated above all else. What I've really spent a lot of time thinking about, though, is that sales can be a truly noble profession. And so, when you think about noble sales, a tech salesperson is someone who's actually solving problems for the businesses that they serve. It's not about me getting a single transaction done with you today, but a good salesperson is providing a solution to a problem that you've really been struggling with. And at the end of it, you'll say, well, I'm so glad I met that salesperson because it advanced my business, moved us forward. I've been in sales now for over 20 years. And, your reputation is part of what makes you successful over time. And so we spend a lot of time on our sales team talking about, what's the integrity of doing sales. We're sitting in the fourth quarter with probably about 60 days before the end of the year. And certainly there's a lot of pressure on our teams to, get your quotas done and make the number and make the company succeed, but not doing it at the expense of your reputation or a company's reputation, and not doing bad business that, clients are going to be upset about.
Yeah, it's really, really fantastic point. You're a good person to ask about this. Like you said, you've been in sales for 20 years. What are the broader market changes that might put pressure on the type of sales you described? I mean, we have SaaS, we have churn now, don't we? It's important to form good client relationships. So what have you seen changing, and how have you seen that affect how we need to sell?
Yeah. So, one of the interesting things, Modus is the company that I work for today, and we have a piece of our portfolio, which is a mobile application people have on their phones when they go driving for work. And they use it to track, the customer visits they've made and the expenses they accrue and stuff like that. And it's given us a lot of visibility into what the nature of work has looked like in the US. So from the time the pandemic started, here were how many people were on the road and how many miles they drove a day. And then we've been able to see, as soon as the shutdown happened, how many people in what parts of the country were adhering to the lockdown guidances, and then what the return has looked like. And I'd say, without diving into all the data, the big theme that we're seeing is companies are spending their dollars a lot more cautiously. A lot of people have had to do headcount reductions. A lot of people have had to, scale back the scope of their operations and do more with less. And so as we think about what that means to sell next year, it's really helping companies figure out more than ever, how do you get the biggest bang from your buck? And of course, we always should have been doing that. But in an economy that's a little bit contracted, or where people are being a little bit more cautious on the dollar spend, I think a salesperson has to be even more articulate about the connection between their product, their solution, and a real ROI on it, instead of just a nice to have good feeling that someone throws some cash at it.
Yeah, superb. You have that kind of insight. Let's bridge this then into your relationship with VPs of sales. Kind of what do you look for in a VP of sales, and crucially, how do you stretch VPs of sales to measure their ability and their performance at the beginning of their tenure? And how do you ensure they create these kinds of cultures we're talking about here?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I'm doing some interviews right now because we're fortunate that we're able to grow our team in the coming year, and I think there are a few key things that I'm looking for. The first part of my interview is really just trying to get to the ethics that you bring to your workplace every day. When you get to be a team of 110 sellers now, people are going to make a lot of decisions every day that I don't have any insight into. I don't know the question has come up, let alone how you're going to answer it. And so I need to put a lot of trust into, the VPs of sales or the team leaders that they're going to make the right decisions and make a decision that I can defend. So the first thing that I really want to hear people talk about is just what are the values that you lead your life by? Because if I know where a decision came from and how you arrived at it, I'll be able to defend it even if I don't think it was the right thing. And that's also what's going to ensure that we're going to do good business. I also think a VP of sales needs to be very structured and process oriented. We talk about revenue operations and forecasting, and we want to be really good at forecast accuracy and knowing where deals are coming and having consistent business delivered day by day, month by month, and not one of these sales organizations that poorly performs until the last day of the quarter and then throws a 50% discount and has all the business come in on 4 days out of the year. So really having a VP in their interview process talk about what is the process that they use, whether it's a particular sales methodology, but also what are the measures that they look to on a routine basis so they can keep track of accountability. And then finally, looking at sort of development, how do you get the most out of, again, a wildly diverse team, knowing that your sellers, operate in different markets with buyers that have, different political views or different needs. I think it's really important to have a sales team that reflects those diverse communities and thinks in, very different ways. But then a VP has to have a lot of emotional intelligence to lead, sellers that don't necessarily look, act, and think exactly like they do, but can adapt to, different situations.
Yeah, he says something there which is great, which is that, of course, VPs, they'll be making decisions every day that you won't have visibility of. It's natural. So it raises an interesting question. To what extent are they involved in the strategy versus tactics? And what's your cadence for ensuring that your strategies and tactics are aligned with theirs?
Yeah. So my core leadership team has a meeting every 3 weeks where we're checking in on the tactical piece. We get together on a quarterly basis and kind of reset on where's the corporate strategy going, where's this marketing strategy going, and then once a year we do sort of the annual business planning process. And I have sort of my core leadership team, which is the head of hunting sales, farming sales, sales develop SDRs, and marketing, all sort of at the table, actively participating in that. I think the best organizations, have this kind of top-down approach where, the executive team or the board sets out the big vision that next year we want to grow revenue 20%. And then, each division needs to figure out how do I get there, or maybe the board's goal is we want to grow profitability 20%. So sales needs to grow revenue, operations needs to figure out how they can streamline costs, and on and on and on and on. So then if sales is going to drive revenue, then the next layer of management really is going to talk about, well, how do we get there? What are the products that we're going to sell? How many of each product? What's the right mix? And then that kind of gets into individual tactics of sales pitches and messages and offerings that an individual rep can, look at their plan and their quota for the year and say, okay, my piece in this, this big corporate chain of goals is I have $1 million quota and I'm going to get there by doing, 6 deals of this size with this product and 5 deals of that size with a different product. So if you're explicit in conversation regularly with everyone about, what are we heading towards, and then give everyone sort of the opportunity to understand how their day-to-day activity ties to that, I think that's how we get the best results.
Yeah.
Part of that, we've just finished our business planning for the year, is making sure you're setting goals that are actually achievable. So a lot of what I'm doing when I'm doing 2021 planning isn't just pulling a number out of the sky that says, next year, I think we can sell $6 million more of this product, but it's really turning to, the data, and my sales ops leader is sort of my right hand in this to say, what has our trend been, in each of the product lines? What products are doing well, what products aren't doing well, how long are those sales cycles, how long does it take a new sales rep to come up to speed on that? And then, instead of just throwing a number on a page and saying, here's the goal we're going to set out for, really, how do I think it's actually going to happen with specific sales reps, what's their past performance looked like, and what sort of tweaks can we make that would improve their future performance to get to the goal.
Yeah, it's really superb, JD. I mean, a really pivotal piece here, which we've touched on and want to go into more detail on, is how we create that alignment between revenue teams. But specifically, like you said, we set the strategy, we set the mission. Once that does go down into the tactical level between functional leads, how do we ensure that there's vision into each other's funnels, vision and alignment over each other's metrics, so that everyone's kind of working together here and they don't become siloed?
Yeah. So, I've had the fortune over the last couple of jobs in my career to run both the sales and the marketing organizations. And I've I haven't invented it myself, but I've tagged onto this brand of the marketing organization, really trying to break down those barriers that traditionally, sales and marketing are not on the same page. So, from the very beginning, when we're having the visionary goal setting, it's having the sales leaders and the marketing leaders at the same table, agreeing to the same goal and lining up their personal objectives so they're in sync with one another. Our data says that it takes 17 touches for an opportunity, for a contact to become an opportunity. And I think in a lot of organizations, there's this argument about, was this a sales lead or a marketing lead? And in my organizations, the answer is yes. It took 17 touches. It was both sales and marketing activity, and that's okay. And we don't need to fight about the attribution of that. Now, to support that, we have a whole lot of technology in place that we use a really great sort of analytics tool that has dashboards and daily reporting. So at the beginning of the year, we set up, here's the metrics of success. And every sales rep knows, in order to get one deal closed, I needed to be working 3 opportunities. You have 3 opportunities, I had to have had 5 meetings, and to have had 5 meetings, I had to have, however many phone calls. So they know what that funnel is, and marketing has the same, funnels and flows for them, and the SDRs. Those are dashboards that we look on a daily basis to see, where is it going well, where are we getting off, and where do we need to sort of course correct. The other nice thing about using data in that is the tools we use also have a lot of artificial intelligence that can forecast for us and say, based on past performance, I know that Tom is always the sales rep who's a sandbagger and he commits much less than he actually delivers. Or I know that JD is wildly optimistic and he overcommits and he always brings deals in 3 days late and 20% too short. And so those tools can give us a really accurate forecast on, looking at the metrics and looking at people's individual experience, what's actually going to happen. So by our second week of the quarter, we can look at our data tools, and we predict within $100,000 how we're going to end the quarter on a $28 million book of business each quarter. And so past performance is the best predictor of future behavior, and using data to kind of support that and having everyone have visibility into that is a key part of how we get there.
Yeah, I really love you bring that up because, the second part of the conversation was forecasting, how it's changing. Now, machine learning forecasts, they are relatively new in the grand scheme of things.
Yep.
So talk to me, how has forecast changed, and how do tools like the ones you're talking about change the life of a CRO, and what confidences do they give you?
I feel a lot more confidence. When I began selling in the early 2000s, a sales rep every quarter had to go to the company meeting and make a revenue commitment and say, I'm going to do $400,000 this quarter. And then, the how and the why really, wasn't clearly articulated. And a lot of times the management team didn't see until that sales rep came back 90 days later. I committed 400. What did I actually do? And, I was a winner or I was a loser on that. Today, I think technology, because you can see the meetings people are having, and because you can see the emails that they're sending, and all of those kind of conversational metrics. And we have some AI tools that actually listen to our phone calls and kind of rate the quality of the conversation and how much you're talking, how much you're listening, stuff like that. Suddenly it's not just, I've made a $400,000 commitment, but it's actually supported by, and these are the deals that I'm committing, and these are the deals that are stretches. And then our managers can actually go coach in, in real-time basis on, okay, this particular stretch deal, the data says you've sent them 8 emails over the past 3 weeks and they've not responded to any of them. Yeah, you haven't had a scheduled appointment with any decision makers in that organization for 2 months, yet you're forecasting the deal's going to close in a week. That's just not possible. And so there's a lot more ability to inspect the how and the why something's going to happen, and then coach reps to get better at it. So as a result, I think the forecasts we have are much better and more accurate, but also the skill of the seller is vastly improved because we can coach on much more specific, actionable stuff.
Yeah, superb. I mean, I wasn't a seller in those early 2000s, but I could imagine if you're going to a company meeting and committing a number. I was having a conversation today, actually. It's really interesting to see how personalities interact with those forecasts and those targets. And I can imagine, and would you agree or disagree? Absolutely, that it's perhaps becoming less entwined with people's personalities and more data driven, and therefore more objective. Would that be true?
Absolutely. And one of the things I'm telling my sellers is I don't want you to be the superhero with the cape.
Yeah.
I just want you to be right.
Yeah.
And so, I think there are a lot of reps who grew up feeling like I'm going to really undercommit, and then I'll have the ability at the end of the quarter to just surprise everyone with, and look at this extra deal, and look at this extra deal, and look at this extra deal. And they think that there's some sort of superhero about that.
Yeah.
The problem is if you've undercommitted, I've spent the last 90 days assuming you were being honest, and I've underinvested in the organization because I didn't think I was going to have money to invest that it turns out I really did. Now the reverse is true. There are reps with big egos who want to start by saying, I'm going to be the number one rep and I don't really have a plan to get there, but I'm committing $1 million, and then they never get there, and they fall 20, 30, 40% short. That's obviously no good either, because I've expected this outcome that you can't deliver. So we kind of talk a lot about the Goldilocks of sales, not too big, not too small, but just right. And yeah, you'll have some surprises, and you'll have some things that will surprisingly turn out well, or you'll miss a little bit, but on the whole, it's way better to be right and accurate with me, no matter what the number is, than it is to be wildly off over or under.
That's superb. Question for you, JD, perhaps a closing one, because we're sadly coming close to the end of the time.
Wow, we went fast.
Yeah, I know. If you're in a room full of CROs, let's just imagine the superheroes out there, the best in the world. What questions would you want to ask these folks?
Oh gosh, one of the things that I'm really getting intrigued by is the influence of social selling.
Yeah.
So this is not a very tactical, mechanical thing, but so much more of how people do business is conversations like the one that we're having today, podcasts, LinkedIn posts, blogging, conversations and communications that aren't about selling, but are nevertheless, communicating something about your brand or about your business. And I think there's a lot of really cool insight we can get about our customers and about our competitors and about our marketplace and all of these sort of unofficial sales channels. So I really want to hear from other, revenue leaders about, how are they leveraging those tools and what are the good successes and insights we're going to get there. From a very revenue operations perspective, there's a lot that I want to learn about how can we better coach reps when we're not in the room with them. So especially now that we're at home and we're not traveling to go see customers anymore, people are out there having conversations that you don't have visibility and insight to. And yes, you can listen to call recordings, or you can kind of dial into a Zoom meeting, or over here in some ways, but in many ways our teams are way more autonomous than they were when they were in a physical office. So really, I think 2021 is going to be about how do you get better insight into what's going on out there in the world with your reps on a daily basis, and how can you impact that and influence it. So I have a ton to learn there from my peers, I think.
Yeah, superb. I love that. And it's obviously a brave new world, this landscape of social selling. And it's very different to the marketing we might be aware of a decade or so ago. JD, I really loved that conversation. I find this piece so interesting between philosophy of sales and how should we therefore run our sales floor, but also how that helps us pull sales levers. And I think you had a really good insight into that. And plus, the world of forecast is really great too. Sadly, so many people are still doing stuff on Excel, and it's good to see you guys are leveling up there, which is great. So thank you so much.